Next on Meet the Farmer TV, the First Solar Winery in Virginia.
Meet the Farmer TV is made possible by Planet Earth Diversified, Melli Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design. Culpeper's Channel 21, helping to preserve the agricultural history of Virginia.
DuCard Vineyards, artisanal wine growing, serving the Madison County region.
And
In the Kitchen magazine, serving the community and everyone who loves good food. I'm Michael Clark, your host for Meet the Farmer TV. Today we are in Etland, Virginia, the beautiful foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, and we're going to find out about the first solar winery in Virginia. Now that we've seen this huge investment of years of growing vines in the field, let's find out about the facility, the alternative energy, all that's necessary to make this into fine wine. Let's go talk to Scott Elliff, a community leader, a teacher, an inspiration to many people about agriculture in Central Virginia. The timing. I mean, how long have you been doing this? This looks like 10 years of work here.
Well,
I mean, this doesn't just, you don't just decide to have a winery and then suddenly you've got these beautiful vines and everything tied to wires.
Well, that's right. Our winery has been open all of 1 month, but we've been growing grapes here for 10 years. And it's really a long-run kind of investment and business to be in, because you don't even get any of these beautiful grapes for at least 3 years. You plant and you basically are growing the vine up so that it ends up with this large, healthy trunk, moves all the way out to these arms, and then has the fruiting area that grows basically 1 year after another. So after about the third or fourth year, we're getting some crop, and now that we've been 10 years in, we're getting a full crop here. These are sort of overall generally mature vines.
And we're going to harvest these today.
Well, actually we are. What a lucky day. That's actually a vineyard owner's happiest day of the year is when we finally get to harvest, because you've been working this all summer, from pruning the vines in the wintertime to managing the canopy to all the steps that are involved. Basically, it's a sort of an ongoing tussle with Mother Nature, as is really all agriculture, I guess.
And this has been a really kind of tough year for a lot of people. A lot of people have been watering. I notice you've got a drip irrigation along here, so you're prepared for that?
Well, there's something every year. We've been very fortunate this year, and we like the fact that there's a drought, actually. I have the irrigation system, but we have not used it except for the first year. We haven't used it in 10 years. In fact, everything about growing grapes is almost the opposite of what you know in your garden. You want crummy soil, no fertilizer, basically no water. You're trying to stress the vines, and so that all their limited energy really goes into ripening this fruit. So it's not like at home where you stick something in the ground and you're really happy if it grows and you keep on throwing fertilizer and water on it and everything. Here we want it to be in balance, really, so that we have a balance between the top canopy here, which is effectively a photosynthesis factory, and the fruit, which is the end result.
Yes, you're really kind of going for the sugar and the flavor in those berries.
Exactly.
Now, tell me a little bit about how you picked this location. I mean, we're kind of in this nice little bowl here. What's it called?
Well, this is called a hollow out in the country. We're in Gibson Hollow.
Gibson Hollow
is like a drainage area. But this used to be an apple orchard. And the old timers told me that apple orchards tend to be pretty good sites for vineyards, because I guess they knew back then from lots of experience where the sun was good, where the airflow was good, where the soils were just right, and so forth. And the apple orchard that was here couldn't be rehabilitated, and it's not as much fun as having a vineyard anyway. So we transformed that and turned it into the vineyard in 2000, 2001.
Wow. So this really is a decade-long culmination. Today, 10 years of effort will come to fruit, and you'll cut that fruit and we'll take it into this solar winery. And what gave you the idea for solar panels and being off the grid?
Well, we are the first solar winery in Virginia, and I'm pretty environmentally conscious, at least as best I can be, and we're all kind of cowboys in the vineyard and winery business. We do whatever we think individually is right, and for me, doing it that way is right. So we used solar panels and lots of other environmental features, reclaimed barn wood for our floors, locally harvested timber for the outside framing and so forth, the siding, and we've also eliminated basically all plastics on the inside too. I'll show you our forks and spoons, cutlery and everything are from cornstarch and potato starch and that type of thing.
Terrific.
So we're really trying to be environmentally focused on this, both in the vineyard and also in the winery.
Okay. Let's get a little bit of description of the particular growing method you've got here. I mean, I can see a grafted rootstock, a special open frame, and it looks like we're working really hard to get these vines growing, the sort of mother vine horizontal, and then the yearly vines up. So, I mean, this is a huge amount of effort. The grapes don't grow like this.
Well,
you've got to...
It is. That's one thing you realize, I guess, about the Virginia industry in particular, is that there's a tremendous amount of manual labor, I'd like to call it tender loving care, that gets you each year from the beginning of the season all the way through to this happy day at harvest. The system that we have here is called an open lyre system. It's open, it's a divided canopy, meaning that the vine comes up, the trunk comes up, and we split it, we divide it so that there are two sides, two canopies for the fruit. And we do that because we actually have a fairly vigorous site. So the more we can split this out, the more room there is to sort of soak up that vigor. Because we don't want too much vegetative growth. We're looking for a balance between the photosynthesis up top and the fruit development down on the bottom side. So vineyards are all works in process and experiments, and actually this system is based on one that's been around forever, but we actually changed it around and did it to our own design so that it'll work a little bit better for us here.
And what are the changes?
This is the only place you'll actually see this.
So what are the changes that you've made to make that happen?
Well, one of the things that we did was actually change the configuration of where these cross arms are and how they tie into the post and so forth, so that this top part will be completely vertical, so that we can set up a hedging machine, which, by the way, is very common in France, but very unusual in Virginia. Right. I think we might be the maybe second person that has it. And you put it on the front of the tractor, and what it allows you to do is cut off the extra foliage on the top, on the side, on the top, and on the inside.
Oh, it reaches over.
Yeah, so it's two sides plus a top.
Right.
And the old lyre system had a cross arm right at the top, which would have stopped you from ever being able to do that. So this is something where if we can take a little bit of the time and effort out of managing every individual shoot here as we go along this 10 miles of vine rows here, then we're in a position where we can focus more on the fruit, some of the other sort of higher level elements of
so this method of pruning using hedging machines. Okay, so that's how you get this beautiful accumulation of the fruit right where you want it, and you don't have vines growing all over.
We use the hedging machine to what we call manage the canopy, which really means keep the excess vegetation out, so that the canopy is, again, it's the opposite of gardening. You want it to be light. You want to have a dapple, lots of sunlight and some shade, and lots of airflow, because there are a lot of the diseases that affect these guys are water driven. So that
so that's why the drought's been good.
Well, that's terrific for that, because there's a lot of less what we call disease pressure. But also it means if we keep this canopy light and trimmed in effect and have the fruit down here, and we pull the leaves off from around the fruit normally as well, so that we can get airflow in here too, so it'll dry it off in the morning so we don't trigger some of those waterborne diseases. So it's a matter of setting up the trellising system, we call it, which is this lyre approach, and it's also the pruning and canopy management approach that we use, which includes, as you say, putting down this section of the vine, which is an annual renewal type approach. It's called cane pruning. Cane pruning. So what we'll do at the end of this year is, after we harvest the grapes in the wintertime, we'll take this whole piece off, and we'll take one of these vertical shoots, canes, and it comes down and
so here we can see up close where that's happening, right in here.
Right, there's a good example. We use one that's close to the center, but basically we'll take out all the material that's out here and take a shoot, a long one, good one, a thick one, and lay it down in the same place that this was before. And the buds for next year's crop to make it look like this are already embedded
these little
in
guys
these
here,
individual canes.
And that's, you said, 50 miles?
Oh, we have 10 miles of
50,000
to
feet.
walk it. Yeah.
Wow.
And of course we have all these multiple wires, and basically if you rolled out all the wires end to end, you'd go from here to Charlottesville, which is about 30 miles. But if you were to walk up and down every row and touch every cluster in the vineyard at both sides, you'd be walking about 10 miles.
You stay fit then.
Yeah, well, I don't think so, but we do the best we can. And each of these clusters, each of these shoots gets touched, of course, multiple times a year.
Right.
Both when you're pruning to establish it for the coming season, but also to take the leaves off around the clusters to reduce excess shoots. And later in the year, in fact, we drop about a third of the fruit onto the ground rather than try to harvest it. And it's one of these things.
Yeah, I see some little piles there.
Yeah, some of the fruit gets sacrificed basically for the greater good, so that we can have super mature, super ripe fruit that remains and that we're able to harvest. Everybody says, the old adage in the industry is that wine is made in the vineyard. When you think about what's wine, it's grapes. It's grapes plus yeast plus some aging and fermentation and a little bit of processing, but mostly it's the raw material that's out here. So we focus very extensively on getting the best material we can every year.
Well, there's a lot of technology that you've put to use here. I can hear some birds squawking in the background, and we crossed an electric fence that's much taller than me. That must be for deer control.
Right. We use that to hopefully keep the deer out of the vineyard. The deer know better than anybody when the grapes are getting ripe. And we actually use that as a trigger sometimes for when we put up the electric fence to keep them out. It's been very effective for us this year. One of the worst things you have happen is you show up in the morning and you look, and one of these clusters has just been nibbled away by the deer. So we certainly need to protect that crop that we've made all that investment in. The birds get us as well, and what you hear in the background isn't real birds. It's actually a bird scare machine, which has recordings of bird sounds. Do you speak Blackbird yourself?
Only with a shotgun.
Okay. Well, loosely translated, in Blackbird and in Starling, that bird machine is saying, "Oh no, a hawk has got my wing. I would stay out of here if I were you." And hopefully that works. At least works long enough until we get past the harvest. The birds get used to it, so we don't turn it on until we're just about at harvest, and we're trying to scare them.
That's really interesting. Can you change what it says?
It rotates the calls, so it has various kinds of birds and various levels of distress and that type of thing.
I've noticed the crows do that. There's one, when we go down in our field, there's one that sits way up on top of the tree. And when I come around the corner where he can see me, he starts going off and they all fly up.
He's telling the rest of them that you're showing up.
Yep.
Mr. Shotgun, I guess.
Yes, that's
we don't do any of that around here. We try to be as best in touch with nature as we can. But it's a
well, you don't want any lead pellets in your mine either.
We don't want that. We want a constant balance between nature and growing the fruit here.
So that's a real part of the sustainable plan, is to create systems and natural barriers and use some synthesized bird sounds.
Exactly.
Instead of lots of shotguns or cannons and lots of toxins.
And other things, that's right. And we all do it sort of the best we can, I guess. Growing grapes in Virginia is very challenging. As you all know, the heat and the humidity in the summertime and the big storms that we get. Hail, drought. In the spring, a number of vineyards every year get affected by frost. And what happens is these little buds that you lay down on the fresh cane in the spring, if they get frosted, then you don't get any fruit at all for that year. And the sad thing is you still have to manage your whole vineyard and canopy to keep it in place for the next year. So that's one of the things that you do, is to try to select a site that has a little bit of cold air drainage, so that you don't get cold air really right in here where the shoots are.
Have you had issues with it?
We've been very lucky so far. Maybe either lucky or good, but mostly lucky, I think. We actually prune as late in the winter as we can, because pruning the vine actually stimulates its growth a little bit. So we want to delay the start of the growth in the springtime if we can. So we wait.
So this bud doesn't swell and become vulnerable to frost.
Right,
it's pretty tough like this.
Right.
So it'll make it through the winter like that.
And then the little tiny shoots that come out that are an inch long or so, if those get frosted, those are very easily frosted because they're very delicate. So we actually try to do things to delay the onset of what we call bud break. And then in the fall, we've been very happy this year that one of the first things I do in the morning is get up and look at the weather forecast. And I don't mean the TV newsman forecast. I mean the hardcore National Weather Service, NOAA forecasts, so forth, because we want to know what the conditions are out here. And importantly, in the fall, we're looking to see what the hurricane tracking is doing. This year we dodged a bullet, I think, with Hurricane Earl, which originally was planned to come up I-95 and would have had a big effect on us.
Yeah.
But it actually bounced off of North Carolina and back out into the sea, so that's pretty good. So we're very happy to be able to harvest without having that sort of additional problem and so forth.
So a hurricane would be all kinds of wind, possible hail damage, way too much water.
Exactly. And 3, 4, 6 inches of water, the vine is incredibly efficient at processing water. It processes the dew on the leaves is really enough for its nutrition. So it's hydration. So if it gets 6 inches of water, it'll process all that water and push it down in the grapes.
Pop the berry?
Yeah, so it'll split the berries, and then insects get in there, birds get after it, so forth.
Sugar leaks out, and black rot, and all kinds of stuff.
The sugar content as well. So we like it dry, and we're very happy this year.
I can see here like some plastic ties. Is this part of what you did in the spring to actually lay that cane down?
That's right. Yeah, and those are biodegradable ties for the most part. They disintegrate on their own.
So you don't want them to get too tight on there.
Right, so that then next year, because you're going to take off all this material, and the next year you're going to put a new one down.
And so you've gone through and just by hand pulled each of the leaves off that would normally be kind of covering and shielding that.
Right.
Now, is this a bird?
Yeah, that's a bird pecker. It's maybe a bit of disease, but we're not too worried about it when it's that small. I mean, you look at the overall canopy here, the fruit is gorgeous. This is as good a year as we've ever had.
Yeah, some of these things are beautiful. Now, there's something that you're really monitoring, the sugar, the bricks. How do you do that?
Well, we monitor both the sugar content, that's called bricks, and also the pH in the berry.
Okay.
And the pH, you have to take a sample and take it into the lab and basically squeeze the grapes and have a look with a pH meter. But the bricks, we have a handy dandy tool that we can use right out in the vineyard. It's called a refractometer, a refractometer, I suppose, in more of a 1950s type pronunciation, because it refracts the sugar content in the berries, refracts the sunlight.
Okay.
So we're able to catch that and see how much refraction there is, tells us how much sugar content there is or how much bricks there is in the berries. So let's do that. Now, you know, berries are going to differ, so you want to have a larger sample, but we'll at least start with it like that. And this one is at 24 bricks. So that's a very mature berry, and that's really ready to harvest.
Just show me how harvesting. Is there a line that you're lining up?
So when you get the sugar on there, you'll see that there's a little light blue and dark blue line that just shows the amount of refraction.
All right.
Now, in addition to all the measurement, the other thing that we do is, of course, taste the grapes. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm tasting for the flavor development. It's not just about the bricks or the pH. It's really about what kind of flavor you're going to get in the wine. So I'm tasting the berry and chewing on the skin, because the skin has the tannins in it.
Okay.
The tannins have a lot of flavor component, and also that's the thing that makes your mouth pucker when you drink a red wine. Now, these are fairly low tannic berries, it just turns out, for this site and so forth, so you won't get a lot of pucker on them, but the flavors are really coming around, so that's good.
Now, there's a variation in the berries here. So I guess some immature ones there. What are you looking for when you're going to make a sample? It looked like you kind of picked one of the larger ones, kind of the soft versus one of the tight.
Well, you just have to do a random sample. I mean, for this purpose, I'm just picking one so that we can show you how it works, but we obviously do it more comprehensively during the year, and we'll do that every week or so as we get into the harvest season, and then every few days, because we're trying to get just the right balance of bricks, pH, and flavor development. The longer we can keep these grapes on the vine, usually, the better. And one of the things that's been characteristic about our wines here is that we're able to get really super ripe grapes. And the super ripe grapes really turn into very flavorful wines, both on the white side and the red side. And that's part of the consistent feedback we get from people, is that they often like the whole portfolio of wines that we have, which is great. And they say that they're very flavorful and intense, and you can really pick up the different aromas and notes and so forth that we have in our tasting notes about what it's supposed to taste like. The other thing that we do is look, actually, is kind of a high-end technique. We actually
look at the seeds?
look at the seeds. And what we're looking for, you can see how brown those are. That's really great. A seed earlier in the season is going to be green. But you want this is an indicator of how ripe the berry and mature the berry really is. So those are super ripe, super brown. And then I'm going to taste them too and crunch them on my molars.
Okay.
If they're green, they're sort of vegetative. Turns into, in this particular wine, sort of a green pepper aroma and taste in the wine. But if it's really really mature, we end up getting a spicy black pepper taste in the wine, which is really a good feature.
Great.
Maybe we'll taste a little bit later and see if we get that. And what I'm looking for, what I'm testing for, is if they feel sort of chocolatey, cocoa, burnt toast, something like that, as opposed to vegetative. Very toasty.
Yeah.
So, on all respects, we're ready to harvest. So, we've called the crew already. We knew that we were going to be in this position, but the crew will be coming later today, and we'll harvest these and process them. So
have you been for the last 10, 14 days, really kind of every day trying to decide when we're going to do it?
Yeah.
That's part of the weather. Like if it was going to rain this afternoon, you'd be like, I wish I'd done it yesterday.
Right. So even coming over here today, I'm trying to get a further update on the weather. They're talking about maybe a possible shower tonight. Not a big deal, but there's no hurricanes, there's no fronts in the forecast. So we're at exactly the right sort of balance of Brix, pH, flavor development, maturity, and so forth. So it's sort of the perfect storm or perfect non-storm, I suppose, for being able to harvest, and we're really happy about this. Now, of course, this is 2010, so you're not going to taste this wine until 2012. So not only do we have 2, 3, 4 years of developing the vines before we get our first fruit, and almost a decade before we get a full crop load here, but then you have another 2 years in processing and aging the wine before it's released. So it's a really long run sort of play. 1 year on whites, but 2 years on these reds.
Let's go get the crew and get some fruit off the vine. And while they're working doing that, how about you show me this new facility you've built, a solar winery. What does that mean?
Fantastic.
I mean, this is all solar out here, but
well, this is a solar factory out here for turning the sunlight into grapes, into the wine. But we're also doing it in the winery where we have photovoltaic panels on the roof, and we capture the sunlight and turn it into electricity that powers the operation.
Okay.
We're the first and only solar-powered winery. We have enough photovoltaics here to generate our full electrical need overall.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
So you're as long as the sun's shining and there's no hail, we're good.
That's right. We like all of that.
All right, Scott. So now that we know that the sugar's right, we got the right Brix, we might have some rain coming. It's time to get this fruit off the vine and into the winery. And so while the guys are doing all that work and we're waiting for the wine to mature, let's go see the facility.
Great. Fantastic.
All right. So tell me about how this system works.
Well, we have solar photovoltaic panels on the roof there, and as long as the sun is shining, it's generating electricity for us. So when the tasting room and the winery are open and we're using electricity, we're generating most or all of it ourselves. When we're not open and the sun is shining, then the electricity goes back into the grid, and your meter actually runs backwards, which is really cool because you feel like you're sort of putting one over on the power company.
So do they give you full credit for what you put back?
They do, and they're required to.
So it subtracts from what you used.
Right. So on a really hot day in August or whatever, we're using more power than those generate.
Okay.
So we're pulling some electricity down from the grid. But on off days or other times a year or whatever, we're generating more than we're using, so we're putting it back. So we calculated enough panels here and enough expense of panels to basically make it even out. So our electricity bill for the year overall, we hope is going to be zero.
Right. But those things are not cheap. That's probably each one of those squares is $1,000.
Well, more than that actually. But both the federal and the state government and the U.S. Department of Agriculture all have incentives to help you because we're really trying to transition, our whole economy, and including the agricultural economy, to more of a renewable energy resource type approach. And it certainly fits into the whole approach that we're doing here in terms of ecologically friendly, environmentally friendly activities, both out in the vineyard and in the winery. And when we go inside, I'll show you a number of the other features that we do that I think are unique and interesting and sort of leading edge in terms of trying to be environmentally conscious and friendly.
Terrific. Let's go see that.
All right.
Now we don't just plug into these panels. There must be a bunch of equipment that ties that into your system.
Well, there's an inverter in the back, and I'm talking as if I know what I'm talking about, but I'm not really. The guys set it up, and it's an inverter that changes direct current into alternating current that allows it to be used and go back into the grid. But that part of it is sort of a magic.
That's a magic part?
Yeah.
But the power company's got to approve all that stuff, right?
Well, that's right. Yeah, they're required to.
Wow, so you've got pretty much a disconnect and package deal.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
So I mean, it's a little bit like watching paint dry, but when we first started out, and we weren't pulling any electricity down. It was fun to sit out
just
here
watch it zero.
Yeah.
So is this like multi-generation family site, or did you search for years to find the perfect place to build this little building and 10 miles of vineyard, or how did all this come about?
It started, we had a weekend getaway cabin here, and the front of it was a dead old apple orchard, and we transitioned the dead apple orchard into the vineyard. Okay. And it took a couple of years, of course, to establish it, and ultimately 10 years later we have a mature vineyard. We sold off our grapes originally to another winery, but after a couple of years we started making some wine under our own label, because when you talk to somebody and they would ask you, and you have a vineyard, and you'd say, well, where's your wine? And you'd have to explain to people that your wine was in somebody else's, your grapes were in somebody else's wine. That was very unsatisfying for everybody.
Yeah.
So we started to make some wine under our own label, small amounts, and it sold out each year. And we also found that our grapes were in wines that were winning a lot of awards. So we decided that we would expand production and use these grapes and open a facility like this to open to the public.
Wow.
So this building has been open a whopping 1 month, actually, and we have our first wines out here today.
The grand anniversary of the grand opening.
Exactly right, yeah.
So now when you're making wine on your own label, is this like a Paul Newman thing in the bathtub down at the stable? And your business advisor is like, look, man, you really got to get a real facility here.
We do the same thing here that they do very extensively in California. But again, just like my trellising system is fairly unique, and a number of other practices are kind of leading edge, I think, the way that we do the wine is fairly unique as well. We share equipment. We use somebody else's equipment off-site because we've spent all of our money so far in building this building, as well as managing the vineyard. So there's a couple-year lead time in terms of getting the wines that are in the bottle now. So if we were just to build the equipment here, we wouldn't be open for another 2 years or so. So we sort of jump-start it by using off-site equipment. Starting on Saturday, we're going to be making some wine here at this facility, and that's going to be the Reserve Cabernet Franc. It's going to be in limited supply, but it's the very best hand-selected grapes we have, processed with our tender loving care right on site here.
Right. Being picked right now.
Yeah, and I'm sure that'll expand as time goes on as well.
Thank you for watching DuCard Vineyard. Stay tuned for part 2.
Meet the Farmer TV is made possible by Planet Earth Diversified, Melli Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design. Culpeper's Channel 21, helping to preserve the agricultural history of Virginia. DuCard Vineyards, artisanal wine growing, serving the Madison County region. And In the Kitchen magazine, serving the community and everyone who loves good food.